Listen closely, because Capricorn doesn't argue the way you think they do. They don't raise their voice to win. They don't fight to dominate the room. They don't argue to prove they're smarter. Capricorn argues to find out one thing: who is being irrational? And once they know the answer, the argument is already over. Most people don't realize this at first. They walk into a disagreement with a Capricorn thinking it's a normal debate, a clash of opinions, two sides pushing back and forth. But that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is quieter, colder, and far more dangerous if you're not paying attention. Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone at a dinner table. The room is warm. There's conversation, laughter, the clink of glasses. Someone says something careless, maybe a half-truth, maybe an emotional exaggeration. Everyone else reacts immediately, defends, interrupts, raises their voice. The Capricorn doesn't. They pause. Not dramatically, not obviously, just long enough that something in the air shifts. Their face doesn't harden. Their tone doesn't sharpen, but their eyes change. And if you've ever seen that look, you know exactly what it means. They're no longer talking to you. They're watching you. Capricorn's mind doesn't rush toward emotion. It moves toward structure. They're not thinking, how do I respond? They're thinking, does this make sense? And while everyone else is busy defending how they feel, Capricorn is quietly sorting facts from noise. This is where most people make their first mistake. They assume silence means hesitation. They assume calm means weakness. They assume the argument is still happening. It isn't, because Capricorn has already shifted the conversation into a courtroom, and you don't even know you're on trial. Think about a real-life example. Picture a workplace meeting. Someone is frustrated. Deadlines were missed. Tension is high. Voices overlap. Accusations float around the room. The Capricorn manager leans back in their chair, hands folded, expression neutral. They let everyone talk, not because they're overwhelmed, but because they're collecting data. Who contradicts themselves? Who relies on emotion instead of sequence? Who jumps to conclusions without evidence? By the time the room goes quiet, Capricorn already knows exactly what happened. And when they finally speak, they don't attack. They say something like, so just to be clear, this decision was made on Tuesday. The email went out Wednesday morning, and the deadline was Friday. Is that correct? Simple, calm, undeniable. And suddenly, the emotional argument collapses under its own weight. That's Capricorn energy. They don't push harder. They remove the floor beneath you. This is why arguing with a Capricorn feels so unsettling. You don't feel overpowered. You feel exposed. Because they're not trying to beat you. They're trying to understand whether your position can survive reality. And if it can't, they don't need to say much at all. There's a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when Capricorn decides you're no longer being rational. It doesn't come with anger. It doesn't come with insults. It comes with distance. Their tone cools. Their responses shorten. Their eyes stop searching for understanding. That's not disengagement. That's a verdict. Here's the part most people miss. Capricorn isn't emotionally detached. They're emotionally disciplined. They feel frustration. They feel irritation. They feel disappointment. They just don't let those emotions drive the argument. Because to Capricorn, emotion without structure is noise. And noise doesn't deserve control of the conversation. Think about a relationship argument. Two partners standing in the kitchen late at night. One is pacing, hands in the air, voice cracking. You never listen. You always do this. You don't care. The Capricorn partner doesn't interrupt. They let the storm pass. And then they ask one question. When did this start? That question alone changes everything. Because now the argument has a timeline, a beginning, a cause. And suddenly, vague emotional claims feel fragile. This isn't manipulation. It's grounding. Capricorn brings arguments back to earth, whether the other person is ready or not. That's why some people love arguing with Capricorns, and others absolutely hate it. If you're someone who values clarity, you feel safe with them. You know where you stand. You know what's real. You know what can be fixed. But if you rely on emotional pressure, on exaggeration, on bending the truth to protect your feelings, Capricorn feels like a wall you keep running into. And every time you hit it, you're the one who gets bruised. There's another layer to this that rarely gets talked about. Capricorn doesn't argue often. They tolerate a lot. They observe quietly. They store patterns. So when they finally speak up, it's usually not about one incident. It's about a system that's been broken for a long time. This is why their arguments feel heavy. You think you're discussing today? They're addressing the last 6 months. You think it's a small issue. They're talking about a principle. That's also why, once Capricorn decides someone is irrational, they don't keep arguing. They disengage strategically, not with silence as punishment, but with silence as efficiency. Why invest energy in a conversation that can't move forward? This is something Americans feel deeply but rarely articulate. Capricorn energy aligns with the cultural respect for competence, for accountability, for results. They don't care how passionate you sound. If your logic collapses under pressure, they don't care how confident you are. If your actions don't line up. That's why Capricorn arguments feel cold to some people. But cold doesn't mean cruel. It means controlled. Think of a judge delivering a verdict. No yelling, no dramatics, just finality. That's the energy Capricorn brings into conflict. And here's the truth that makes this zodiac sign so misunderstood. Capricorn isn't trying to win arguments. They're trying to prevent chaos. They understand something most people learn too late. Unresolved irrationality spreads. It infects teams, relationships, families. So when Capricorn challenges you, it's often an invitation to slow down, to clarify, to ground your emotions in reality. If you accept it, the conversation becomes productive. If you don't, Capricorn steps back. And that distance, that's what people mistake for coldness. But it's actually discernment. Now let's talk about the moment everything flips. There comes a point in some arguments where the other person escalates emotionally, expecting Capricorn to follow. Raise your voice. Get angry. Fight back. Capricorn doesn't. They lower their voice. That contrast alone can stop the argument cold, because suddenly, the emotional imbalance becomes obvious, and the person who is shouting feels exposed without being attacked. That's a psychological mini-climax most people can't name, but they feel it. It's the moment when the argument stops being mutual. From that point on, Capricorn isn't participating. They're concluding. This is why arguing with a Capricorn can feel like talking to someone who already knows the ending. Because often, they do. They've seen the pattern before. They've played this conversation out in their head. They know where it leads. And they're only there to see if you'll surprise them. Most people don't. But the ones who do, they earn something rare. Capricorn respect. Not because they won, but because they stayed rational under pressure. That's the real victory in a Capricorn's eyes. Not dominance. Not submission. Stability. So if you've ever walked away from an argument with a Capricorn feeling strangely unsettled, like you lost without being attacked, now you know why. They weren't trying to defeat you. They were trying to see if your reasoning could stand on its own. And when it couldn't, they didn't need to say another word. If this made you rethink every argument you've ever had with a Capricorn, you're not alone. And if you want to understand the signs the way they actually show up in real life, not the watered-down versions, make sure you like this, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Because once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them, and that changes everything.